Hello everyone, I'm John from Nickton Gaming, and today we are going to talk about how to create 2D animations in two different ways and how to really work with their animators. Now, the first thing we will look at are the assets that I have. I have one image, which is just a big asset pack of mine. And we will work on animating a few of these different things, like maybe my slime and my coins. And we also have a folder of multiple different separate images, which I will use an updated version of these in my upcoming catastrophic game, which is about Paige, a girl going to school and avoiding cats. Of course, she always fails and ends up playing with the cats in the end. So I'm looking forward to that one. But first, let's look at our picture. Now, you see that this is a single picture with multiple different assets in it. And I just dragged and dropped it from my download or from my project folder from a different game that I worked on years back. I need to update it. And I dragged and dropped it into my animations example for this video. But it came in as a single sprite mode because it's a single image and Unity has no idea what it is. Make sure that the texture type is not default. Sometimes it will set it to default, but we want it as a sprite 2D and UI. Then I want to set the sprite mode to multiple because I do have multiple sprites here. The next thing you have to do before we can do anything else that we want to do, we want to set apply. Now I will go into the sprite editor. You may need to download the sprite editor for Unity if you don't have it. And we'll go to slice. Now you could try an automatic slice, but I find the automatic slice is usually not okay. The automatic slice might be okay for if you are doing some pixel grounds. Oh, it looks like there's been some file degrading here. That used to be, pixel perfect, but now it's zombie-like. Interesting. So I will change the type to grid by cell size. Then we can see that it gives me a default of 64 by 64 for a single cell size, and we can see how that looks. So I have 12 cells here, but this is definitely way too big. Now, if you don't know how big one of your cells are, you can kind of drag around like this and see that, okay, maybe one of my cells is about 18 by 18 for a single cell, which that is my cell size. So I will go here, I will delete this, I will go up to slice and then grid by cell size, and I will type 18 for X and 18 for Y, and we can see that it does do that. So I will click slice now, and it has sliced everything. I do want to go through these pixels and delete them, just because they have nothing there, and it will be exported along with all of your other pixels if you do not delete them. So it's best to just clean it up now while you can. Another thing you can do is you can go through and you can name them. So I can, instead of calling this pixel 54, I can call this coin underscore. Let me copy that and I'll call it 0. Then the next turn I will call coin 1. This one will be coin 2, coin 3, coin 4, and coin 5. We also have my outlined ones, so I can say outline coin 0. I think I'll use the outline ones instead. Coin 1, coin 2. The naming, of course, does not matter. The only person the naming helps is you. So I think we'll go through our coins, and we may even go through the slime for a little bit. Now, before you close, make sure that you click Apply. If you want to undo all of the slicing and the naming, you can click Revert, but we don't want to revert, so I'll click Apply, wait barely a second, and we can see it here. And if I click this arrow, we can see all of my things as well, which is perfect. Now, with the other one, we do not need to apply any changes here because they are already sliced up. However, this can be much easier to change, especially if I wanted to change a single element of this. It would be much easier, and as long as I keep the file name the same when I switch it, when I delete it and move it back into my assets folder, it will keep all of the slicing that we did, as long as you keep the name the same. But with this, it can be easier to get started with the animation, but harder to change or more tedious. The next thing we want is we want an animation window. So I will go up to Window, I will go down to Animation, and I want Animation. We can also press Control 6, I believe, to open this up. I'm going to dock my animation right here next to my project folder so I can drag my images over easily. And let's start in my scene with, let's go with one of my coins. So I'll just put this here, let me put it at 0, 0. I will select it, go here, and I'll press F to zoom in on it. And yeah, we can toss this onto a canvas if we want as well. That would work just as well. But I'll do it in the animation scene, maybe with my... Sure, we'll do this in the animation scene, and then we will add our slime onto a canvas. So, while I have the coin selected in my hierarchy, I will go to the animation, and it says to begin animating outline coin 0, create an animator and an animation clip. So, if I select the main camera, it says to begin animating main camera. So make sure that you have the correct thing selected. If you have nothing selected, it will try to animate the last thing that you did select. So be careful with that and make sure that you read the name carefully because it can be annoying to change. I will create a new folder which I will call Animations. I will go into it and I will call this Coin Anim. Now, it's very easy from here on. We see a timeline. So it goes from 0.00 all the way to 1 second. We see, if we keep scrolling out with the middle scroll bar, we can see that we can go to 20 seconds. Now, I usually try to keep my animations with a 5 to 15 second difference. And in this case, it really depends on how fast you want your animation running by default. You can change the speed of your animator in script, but that is unnecessary script if you can, set your animation up properly from the get-go. So now, you can also press the drop-down arrow to see a little example image of your sprite. So that's number 1. We have number 2, I'll put that at 5. Number 3, I'll put that at 10. Number 4, perfectly sideways coin at 15. The next one at 20, and then 25. And we can see that my coin is now done, but what it does is it goes 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, but then it loops around, skipping this. So if I were to actually play this animation, you see that there's a bit of a skip right when it reaches 25, it skips. So keeping this video in mind, if I were to add my coin 0 5 seconds after my last one, and you can see that there's no longer a skip. It's now much smoother. So I find that oftentimes just by adding one more animation to it would get it perfectly. Now, if you want things like a box collider that changes with the animation, that is also very simple. So let me add my box collider. Since this is in the 3D area, I will use a box collider 3D. But there are multiple ways where you can change it frame by frame. You can change it here, you can go and change it here, and it might not apply. You might need to add the property, and that can be very tedious. So a simple way to do this is to click the recording button, the keyframe recording. Then I will click the edit bounding volume key for the edit collider of my box collider. I'm going to zoom in further, and I will move it down to just the outer limits of my coin. Now you can scroll it over, and then you can move it more to fit the outline, and move it over again, and you can see that it will keep the points throughout. If you set it off like this and you want to move it over, just left click and hold, and then you can drag the time when it will set the outline for it. Now if you see, we can see it actually shrinking the outline before we get to that point. So what you do is you just go a point of a second before, as small as possible, and then drag it back. So we see no change, no change, no change, sudden change. So that is how you can get it to skip like that. Now, if you do not want to have to do this every single frame, because this can become very tedious very quick, especially if you have a larger animation such as a 64 frame animation, where you still want the box collider to change as the object is animated, we did see that it does kind of move beforehand. So what I can do is I can stretch it out to where I want, and if we look, it will move all the way on its own and fit fairly accurately all the way to the finished point. Now if we play it again, you can see the box collider moving. So you can set it this way if you want everything pixel perfect, or you can just do it like I did here, where you set the first one and the smallest one and the largest one, and it will be fairly okay. We can also see that if I go here and I delete, let's see if I can select just the, yeah, there we go. Select just the box collider, it changes. Looks like I need to click on the key down there and then click on the top one. There we go. So now I just have the biggest one, the smallest one, and then again the biggest one. And we can see that it matches an acceptable amount. And we can see over here my horribly looking coin rotating. Maybe if I change the resolution to something friendlier. But okay, the image does not matter too much. And then just click disable, and it keeps your animations, and it keeps the changes that you made during the animation. Now, this is also true for doing something like changing anything else, any other changes that you make to the coin while the recording is active will be saved. So for example, if I move this up 0.1, maybe 0.01, and then I go here and I move it up 0.02, and then I go here and I say 0.03, and using the same method as we did here, I can even put this down to 0.00, and we can see that it will go up and down. Now, to show you again that you do not need to set throughout just the smallest, the largest, and then the smallest value, and it will still work perfectly fine. Let me turn off my recording, and we do see that it still smoothly goes up and down. Now we can enhance this by going to my highest value, and I will set this all the way up to, oh, I don't know, what if I set it to a crazy number? Let's go wild. Set it all the way up to 1, and then I play my animation. Oh, looks like I might want recording on when I set that value. Turn it off again. There we go. Now we can see it just having a field day. It's going to town, moving up and down very fast. Okay, now that's how you can build a very basic animation. If you want to change the time, if you want to change the speed, there are 2 ways that I know of doing this. The first way is to just drag everything out, frame by grueling frame. This can be excruciating to do because you need to keep zooming out, you need to keep dragging out. You could do the math for it if you want, but we're programmers, we don't need math. And there we have, a slower animation. But we can also do this by script, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But first, I want to add an image. Now let's zoom to our image, and this time we've looked at how to drag from our pixel, so let's look at animating our page girl, and we will even look into the animators with her. So first I will grab the page idle. I'll just do page idle and page running. Oh, she looks so short and fat like this. I like it, let's go with it. Normally she's about 200 by 100. Yeah, a 2 by 1. So setting her 100 by 100 actually gives her more of a chibi effect. I like how that turned out. Okay, we're getting sidetracked. So let me rename her to Page, and I will create an animation clip for Page. Now, the animations that you create when we want multiple animations for one object, we want to give it a specific name. So this is not just the page animation, this will be page idle, because I want this to be Paige doing her idle dance that she does. I want it to be a little bit slow. She's not in too much of a sugar rush. And we can go down and we can see she's got this nice little bounce going on. I think it might even be nice to stretch it out a little bit more. Let me put this over here at 45, this over here at 30, and let's see. That's good. If anything, maybe too slow, but oh well. And we, of course, do see a little skip again, so I can drag page idle 1, and that was 45, plus another 15, it would be at 1 minute. And there we go. That's much smoother. And you can see it take effect right away. Now the last frame you add here does not matter. It will be shown for the slightest fraction of a second. So you can show the first one, you can show the last one. I don't recommend using a random image just because it may be displayed for a single frame, which can be enough for a player to view it, especially during a high CPU time. But okay, so that's the page idle. But I want to see her running as well, so I will type page, or I will create, sorry, let me just cancel out of all this so I can guide you properly. So I'll click the down arrow and I will click create new clip. This will create a new animation clip for the page image object. And I will call this one page running. And if I look down, I have my page running. Here we go. So, page run 1, page run 2, page run 3, page run 4, page run 5, page run 6, and then one more page run 6. And if I press play, we can see her doing a nice little run. But it can be hard. How do we switch from the idle to the running? And that's where our animator comes in handy. Now we will be animating with a Boolean value, but you can use integers or floats to animate as well. For example, if you have a walk and a run, you can set an integer value or a float value where if the joystick being pressed is just about 0.2 in the horizontal axis, then it would be a walk. But if it's over 0.2, then it's a run. So that's how you can, do a tiny little walk in video games versus your, full-on jog. And of course, the same thing applies with Paige. If we said that we wanted our box collider on her, oh, actually, because she is on a canvas, let me give her a box collider 2D. Let me click the recording and we can set the bounds of the box. Oh my, is it really this tiny? I am not sure why her bounding box is so compact. But there we go, we've increased the size. We can reduce it. We can, continue on. Maybe we want it big over here again. Maybe we want it smaller. And of course, if you're doing this for your game, I do recommend putting a little bit more care into it. And then we can turn the recording off and we can see how it kind of moves around. Now, of course, I just tossed it together as an example, so it might not be too pretty. And if you want to remove all of it, then just click on the part here and click delete. And I think I will just completely remove that box collider. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we want to open a Animator window. So let's go to Window, animation, animator. And because we have page selected, or page was the last thing that we selected when we opened the animator, it shows her animations. If we select coin, it will actually show our coin animation. So make sure that you have selected the object that you want. Now you can do many things with this animator. You can drag it out and increase the size, but I like to have it docked just for my sake. And I also like to kind of move these things into a more understandable area. Now all we care about is entry. Entry will go to the first animation that you created. So the first animation that you create should probably be your idle animation or your base entrance animation. And to change this, there is a way to change it, but it's a bit annoying. I will now shrink this actually, because we will want to be using our inspector along with this, so we can change the values of our transitions. So I will right click page idle, I will select make transition, and we see that I have this little arrow that I can drag around, and I will want page idle to move to page running. So I'll left click on page running, and now it's created this transition. Now the default transition with exit time I find to mostly be useful for 3D animation when you have body parts moving slowly. However, with 2D animations, I do not like to use the transition because it can become a little weird. Now, no model in the preview. Let's it should have the page model in the preview, but it doesn't always do that. So you may see this, you may not. Very Unity-like. But what I will do is I will say that it does not have exit time, it does not have a fixed duration, and the transition duration is 0. However, we now get this error or warning: transition needs at least one condition or an exit time to be valid. Otherwise, it will be ignored. So at this current time, this transition will never run. It's like saying, if false, do this. Well, false is always false. So I now want to go to my parameters, and I will click the plus. We can add a float, an int, a bool, or a trigger. I believe a trigger is just a fancy way of saying bool, but we will be using a bool instead, and I will call this bool is running. Now, as I said, you can also use something like a float, and you can have the transition trigger for the walk at the float is equal to 0.2, while the running is if it's greater than 0.2. But we don't want that, so I'll right click and delete it. Now let's go back to my transition. I will go to the conditions, I will press the plus bar, and idle will go to running if is running is true. Then right click, make a transition, because we want to go back to the idle if we are not running. So if running is false. And I will turn this off as well. So what this says is when the is running parameter is true, idle goes to running. When the is running condition is false, running goes to idle. If it's false, then nothing changes from idle. If it's true, then nothing changes from running. Okay, but we don't have any way of affecting this yet. So let's go back to my animation example. We can effectively close my animations tab. I will right click and I will create a C# script, and I will call this my page animator. You can of course name this whatever you want, but let's open Visual Studios and let's start to animate, or let's start to make some changes on our animator. So first we want an instance of our animator. Let's wait for, there we go. Now it's loaded. Okay, and we want an animator. Make sure it's OR animator, and I'll call that animator. Yes, so you must have this. You shouldn't need to import any other libraries because it comes from the default Unity engine, which you need for mono behavior as it is, and mono behavior allows you to assign the script to an object in your editor. Okay, the next thing, I want to have a float, and I will call that speed. I also want a string for is running. You know what? Let me talk about this, because this can be interesting. Enums. And enum is a way that you can list multiple things. So I will call this enum page animation parameters. I'll make curly brackets, and then I will say is running. I have other animations. For example, we have not made them together, but say I have is damaged, is jumping, and is sliding. So now I have this enumerable page animation parameters. Now we can see kind of what this does if you have no idea about these. Oh my, private void start? What happened to my P? So if I say print, and then I say, let's make curly brackets, make another one, I will call this page animation parameters of the value 2. So this should be is jumping, and then I say dot toString. So what this does is it says I want the second part of the page animation parameter, so 0, 1, 2, and then I say turn it into a string, a list of characters, or an array of characters, however it stores it. And then I want to print it to my screen. Print is a fancy way of saying debug.log. I'm not sure when it was added to Unity, but I learned about it way too late. Now I can also say print page animation parameters dot is damaged dot toString, and we will see these enumerable names be displayed. Now in my update, let's say if input.getKey down. Now we have many things here. We have getKey, which is while the key is being pressed. GetKey down is the first time the key is pressed down, and then GetKey up is the first time the key is released. So I like to use GetKey down because that will only get it once, and it will get it when you first press it. So depending on how you want it. You could do a thing like to charge a weapon, where while the get key it starts charging, and then while get key up, it fires. Stuff like that. And let's see, for the running, I'm going to press R and get keycode.r. Now we see that there are also many things here. There's the escape key, the enter key or return key, space key, backspace key, down key. There's the caps lock key, the colon, the comma, but I want R. Now, if the R key is pressed, and here, let's go over here and say bool is running equals false. Then I will say animator dot set bool. Now there is a set bool, there is a set int, set float, or set trigger, I believe, and you can set them all here. But let's look at what we need to set a bool. I need the name of the Boolean parameter that I want to set, and I need a Boolean value, so I need to say true or false. So I will set the page animation parameters dot is running, and I want to set that to my Boolean value is running. Oh, but look at this. It cannot convert from my enumerable to a toString, so we'll just say toString. There we go. But we have not assigned is running, so this would always be set to false. So I will say is running equals not is running. Now, what this says is if is running is true, it is equal to not true, which is false. If it is equal to false, then we set it to not false, which is true. Okay. The next thing I want to do is I will say if input dot get key down, and let's set this to S for speed. And I will say animator dot speed equals speed. So I will set it to whatever my speed value here is, and let's give it a default of 1. Okay, let's go to our scene again, and I'm just going to drag this file onto page. You can have an animation controller, it does not matter where you put it, as long as we assign the animator by dragging page in here. You can also use the get component or find the object, but I prefer to assign it explicitly so we don't have to wait for it to find the object. Now let's play this. We should see Paige in her idle animation. Which we don't. How interesting. Okay, because it is paused, because I have set this. So it says Unity remote requirements check failed, and that just means that in my editor I was telling it to connect to Android devices. So if I undo it, I could also press the pause button. So quick little tidbit there if you have that issue. And there we go. Now she's in her idle animation. If I click R, she is now running. If I click R again, she has stopped running. If I click R and then S, it sets the speed to 1. If I set it to 0.5 and then S, she's now very slow. If I set it to 10 and then click S, she's very fast. So you can see that speed is the way to set the animator speed. We also see is damaged and is jumping printed to the console. So that is how you can handle 2D animations. We also talked about some topics that you can use alongside this. So hopefully this fairly basic demo has been helpful for you. Um, if you like it, then please like the video, watch my other tutorials, and even subscribe. So, thank you for watching and have a good day.